Oftentimes in America, we are faced with images of glaciers melting, of sea level rise far off and away, of people being displaced. But what if I told you all of this is hitting closer to home than you'd initially expect? These people are receiving little to no support from our federal government. This is the story of America's first climate refugees.
President Trump believes climate change is a hoax. We know this because he has said it over and over again.
So Obama's talking about all of this with the global warming and that, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay? It's a hoax.
The president has tweeted climate change skepticism at least 115 times, including a claim that the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese. So the president has very firmly established his position on the issue and has shown no indication that he's changed that position.
Trump is choosing to deny clear, valuable signs. In a recent 2014 synthesis report put out by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, specifically for policymakers, researchers included these graphs detailing temperature increase and sea level rise based on different climate scenarios using state-of-the-art climate models. If we don't act now as a nation, things are sure to get worse.
About 150 years ago, humankind began to take the reins of global climate. And today, in terms of the global climate, we are the most powerful thing driving climate change. Human emissions have increased enormously in the last 150 years, as Tony showed us in some of the graphs. And really, now we are the dominant source of climate change on the planet. So think about that for a second. For thousands and thousands of years, humans existed, began to build civilizations, but really it's only in the last 150 that we began to drive our climate out of what was already a warm period into a much, much warmer period.
This is a small community of 400 indigenous people from Kivalina, Alaska, located 83 miles above the Arctic Circle. For years, they have been fighting sea level rise, but scientists and engineers fear the island to be uninhabitable by 2025. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers constructed a rock erosion barrier, but both they and the citizens know this is a temporary solution to a much larger issue.
Our village is shrinking. It's just getting smaller and smaller.
A lot of homes got 3-4 families in a house, a 3-bedroom house, which really is homelessness. There's no place else to go, no place else to build. And when you take away freedom from any human being, they begin to question whether or not you should live.
Despite this location seeming so far away, the reality is closer than you might think. These poor individuals are combating climate change every day without the help of those that should be supporting them. Sadly, they are not the only ones.
My name is Edison Dodo, and I'm from the island. My grandpa was here, my dad was here, I'm here. So we've been on the island for a long, long, long time. I still do the same thing what I was doing when I was 10 years old. We talk, we laugh, we catch some fun. In the 60s, stuff like that, we didn't have no water. That island was green, green, green. We used to play in the tree, play like Tarzan, stuff like that. Now in the 70s, after they cut the pipeline, we started having our water in the yard. Now that was a mistake they made. I guess they thought they were doing something good. They did something bad.
This is just one of the many symptoms of climate change that shows just how urgent it is to fight it. Over the past 70 years, Louisiana has lost almost 1,900 square miles of marsh and is still losing up to 30 square miles every year. For comparison, that's nearly a football field of wetlands lost every hour. The Barataria and Terrebonne basins are two of the most rapidly eroding estuaries in the world, and they are right here in southeast Louisiana. The basins produce 30% of the nation's seafood production. They provide wintering habitat for migrating waterfowl such as ducks and geese. They're also an entry point for 18% of America's foreign and domestic energy supply. The land is home to half of our country's oil refineries, serving 90% of the nation's offshore energy production and 30% of its total oil and gas supply. The port is vital to 31 states. That means 2 million people that will have to find somewhere else to live. At the current rate that the sea is rising and the land is sinking, the Gulf of Mexico could rise as much as 4.3 feet by 2100. If this happens, most of southeast Louisiana would be underwater. We need to combat that as much as possible. If this trend is not reversed, a wetlands ecosystem that took nature 7,000 years to build will be destroyed in a human lifetime.
Tangier Island off of Virginia is home to around 450 people who may soon find themselves with no other choice but to abandon the island. Located on the Chesapeake Bay, Tangier Island is disappearing as a result of rising sea levels and storm-induced erosion. Since the 1850s, the island has shrunk by 2/3 and is projected to eventually disappear. The community who lives here are deeply conservative and religious and do not believe in human-induced climate change. Many of the leaders of Tangier suggest that a seawall and God will protect them and their families from what they refer to as natural cycles and waves. However, the island continues to vanish as the sea level rises, making it likely that the residents of Tangier Island may be forced to become climate change refugees.
When Hurricane Maria hit the small American colony of Puerto Rico, it caused $90 billion in damage, cut off electricity for the entire island, and potentially killed approximately 1,000 residents. The Puerto Rican infrastructure is only slowly being repaired, while thousands are still without electricity and cell phone service, with many still lacking access to basic needs such as food and clean water. Relief funds from Washington are also nowhere to be seen for Puerto Rico, as the U.S. Treasury laid $4.7 billion in aid and are trying to slash the disaster relief budget in half. If the budget is cut, Puerto Rico will be forced to choose certain essential services over others, which will interrupt electric, water, sewer, and other utilities. In the meantime, more than 200,000 refugees have already left for the mainland U.S., with more leaving daily. Lacking funds and support from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, could potentially lead to thousands of refugees becoming homeless. Many participants could lose their benefits and would only have 7 days to get a new residence. The fact that the United States government is denying its own citizens basic needs and support is a tragedy and portrays a complete lack of responsibility for the Trump administration.
In order to tackle these climate refugees issues, it must be addressed at a federal level. We call on the EPA, the CDC, and FEMA to create a legal framework to protect climate refugees. Currently, there are not many laws or regulations in place, making it essential that this pressing issue is taken on from a federal level. The United States Environmental Protection Agency should focus on preventative measures of greenhouse gas emissions, as it threatens the safety and well-being of the population. They should take steps now to phase out greenhouse gas emissions, as these contribute to sea level rise, causing refugees. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention focuses on improving public health through promotion, prevention, and preparedness activities. The CDC should enforce the Climate Change Health Protection and Promotion Act of 2017. This bill, introduced by Senator Ed Marecki, would direct the Secretary of Health and Human Services through the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to create a national strategic action plan, which would help health professionals in preparing for and responding to public health effects from climate change.
The Federal Management Agency helps coordinate the federal government's role in preparing for, preventing, mitigating the effects of, responding to, and recovering from all domestic disasters, whether natural or man-made. FEMA should help provide more funds and housing for those who are displaced and affected by climate change. The federal government is clearly at fault and responsible for these individuals being displaced. This is the time for these agencies to act. For climate refugees, tomorrow is too late.
In an article posted by The Guardian, Matthew Taylor summarizes our point very clearly. In our rapidly changing world, climate change, and its potential to trigger both violent conflict and mass migration, needs to be considered as an urgent priority for policymakers and business leaders alike. The unpredictable nature of climate change effects causes a variety of complications for American citizens in affected areas around the nation, such as Kivalina, Puerto Rico, Louisiana, and Tangier Island. People are already being displaced at this very second. Imagine having to pay the price of the country's actions while our current government sits and mocks climate change behind a Twitter handle. Although there are many obstacles in the way, the first step is to get this issue on your local representative's agenda so that they can get this included into the federal budget. Are you feeling sad, depressed, and hopeless? Don't know how to help? Use this navigator to find your local representative so that they can accomplish this for you. This is more than sharing a post on Facebook. Consider integrating this topic into your daily conversations with your dad, mom, grandma, brother, sister, grandfather, professor, or a friend, anyone who cares to listen. Since the 1850s, Tangier Island has shrunk by 2/3 in size and is projected to eventually disappear within the millennial's lifetime. Louisiana is losing nearly a football field of wetlands every hour. Only on April 3rd of 2018, aka this year, Kivalina just received word that they can begin the contracting process for building an emergency evacuation and school access road. In Puerto Rico, 467 schools are expected to close by 2022 as a result of the post-Maria exodus. So what will you do about this?